This is the Persistence of Vision podcast.
Hi, I'm Clint Till. In each episode of Persistence of Vision, I talk to creative professionals and listen as they share their own experiences and the lessons that they've learned along the way. Today, I have a very special guest, Allyson Morgan, a fantastic actor, writer, producer, a filmmaker. She does it all. She has a very strong theater background. She's from Ohio. She's lived in New York City for a number of years. And Allyson and I met at the Magnolia Film Festival, where she was screening her short film, Ghost, that she had directed. And I was screening my short film, That's My House. And we got to talking while we were there. We swapped our contact information. We shared some stories. She gave me some really great advice. And just immediately I was struck by her and just her tenacity, her resilience, her persistence. And as I listened to her, I thought to myself, she is just a perfect representation of what this show is about, the persistence of vision, going after what you want, knowing what you want, and just having, making opportunities for yourself through the work. And we just had a fantastic conversation. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Allyson Morgan. I looked on your website in preparation for this conversation. I'm super excited. But when I looked at your website and saw your bio, there is just so much that you are doing and have done. And I was so excited because there's so much that I'm sure we can talk about. And from acting and producing and writing and doing all this stuff that you do. So this is going to be a thrill. First out of the gate, how do you introduce yourself professionally with all the stuff that you've done?
Yeah. Well, first, hi, Clint. Good to see you again. We spent time together at the Magnolia Independent Film Festival. And what I love about film festival environments is making new friends and colleagues that we can stay connected to. And so if you asked me in Mississippi who I am, what I do, I would say I'm a writer and a filmmaker. If you ask me at a party, I might say something different. I might say, oh, I write and I act. If you ask me on a date, I might say depends on the day. I think this identification with career feels very complicated.
Yeah.
I think tying identity to what you do is very American and something that I'm really used to. And I've really struggled with because for a long time, I identified as an actor first. And so that was how I introduced myself. And frankly, in the last handful of years, I have been more of a writer and now a filmmaker. And it feels weird to let go of the actor part. And it feels imposter syndrome ish to say I'm a filmmaker when I just directed my first film. So I usually try to feel out who I'm talking to and what the environment is for the appropriate response, and if there is space to fill that in with more nuance or context. It's funny, I think I have friends who have a really negative connotation with networking, with traditional you think of, like, exchanging business cards and
Right.
firm handshakes. And to me, I've always, I don't know, for better or worse, been quote unquote good at what you would call networking because I'm just curious about people. I like talking to people. And I think if you can reframe the idea of networking as just meeting more people, it both kind of takes the pressure off of every interaction to be
Hmm.
some kind of special moment or like, can this person help me? Interaction to just like who is this person, like what are they about, what's their work about, and I have met more friends, more collaborators that way by just being kind of genuinely curious about other people's work. And like I do a lot of these festivals by myself, and you were at this festival by yourself, but
Yes.
you have to be a little bit bold when you're traveling alone just to introduce yourself to other people who are there by themselves, who are also looking for connection and community also.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of this connotation around the word networking, like you said, that feels a little selfish in a way. Like there's always some sort of ulterior motive that people in the room have when you meet them. But what you said, it's spoken like a true writer, I think. When you talk about your love of listening and observing and talking to people and getting to know them, it's like that sounds like something that, I mean, you can't be a good writer unless you're an observer of people and a good listener, you know.
I think that's true. I think you never know where your next bit of dialogue or your next great character or your next like topic that might come up. And for me, it very often is out of the most mundane conversations that somebody once said to me in college as a side job, they worked as a party starter, which is the person who Cooper Rafe just made a whole movie called Cha Cha Real Smooth, but they go into bar mitzvahs and literally like hype up everybody at the party. And I was like, that's a weird job. Tell me more about that. And I've been like writing or thinking about writing a whole show about, like a riff on Party Down about party starters because of this really random interaction that I had with this one person. And I think you just have to be open to those kinds of moments. That's what makes meeting people fun and not as anxiety producing.
Yeah, it reminds me of a podcast that I listened to where, because I'm a huge podcast nerd, about just that same thing about the story of this guy whose job it was in his 20s to go around. He was repped by this, I think it was a bourbon or a whiskey or something, to go around and kind of be the party guy to get everybody hyped up and amped and talk to them and get them going. So yeah, I'll get some ideas if I'm listening to a podcast or talking with others and say, well, that's interesting, and kind of try to make a mental note.
Yeah, or I don't know if I said to you, but, I was at the Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita, Kansas in 2021, and I ended up talking to this woman, Tara Sheffer, and she also was based in New York, and we sat down at this it was like a women in film panel. We just started chatting, and we both were like, "Oh, I feel like we have tastes that align, like, we should stay in touch." Um, and then she ended up producing The Ghost. Like, when I
Hmm.
was looking for a producer, I was like, "Oh, that woman Tara who I met at that film festival, she seemed really, like, cool and interesting. Maybe I should reach out." And so, in addition to, like, friendships, I do think the networking part of it is also lateral. It can also just be people that you think are interesting and are working that can help you on your next film. It doesn't have to be, a studio executive that you're trying to
Yeah.
network with. Like, you just never know where your next collaborator is gonna come from.
Yeah, we always dream about going to those festivals and having somebody pat you on the shoulder after your screening, hand you a business card, and say, "I want to be in the Clint Till business. Give me a call." That's kind of the dream, right? Like, I like what you did there. So I want to back up a little bit because I know you, like I said, you're doing a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of things. You've got your hands in a lot of different creative pies. But take me back a little bit to what started it all for you. Was it acting that first propelled you into this world? Was it writing? Was it something else? Let's go back a little bit.
Sure. Well, in second grade, I wrote a book called The Purple Bunny with Pink Wings about a bunny who felt like he didn't fit in. And I won a like children's award for that. And I honestly like didn't think much about it. To be honest, my parents got divorced when I was young, when I was about 10 years old, and I started doing children's theater as a weekend activity when I was, looking for frankly, like, family and community as kind of like a weird kid, like a smart kid who was nerdy, who didn't quite fit in, as I think a lot of creative kids and a lot of artistic kids feel. I started doing, yeah, community theater plays in Columbus, Ohio at Columbus Children's Theater, and so I wasn't really writing. I was always, like, a good writer. I was writing in school, but I started acting and having fun acting, and that can kind of continued through college, where I never really thought of acting as a career because I always say when you're a smart kid, nobody tells you to go into the arts. They tell you to be a doctor or a lawyer. And it wasn't until I went to Ohio State that I had teachers who taught us that actually this could be a career if you take it seriously and, really train. So I was still kind of acting focused, but we had a class that was writing for actors that really taught us how to start developing our own work. And then also in college, when I was 21 years old, I started a theater company with 5 other women at Ohio State. And we were putting up our own plays, we were producing them, we were directing them, we were devising them, I was writing our press releases. because I have degrees in theater and communications. So I learned really early how to create my own work, to give myself opportunities as an actor, to give my friends opportunities. And so that kind of continued into moving to New York. I started a theater company with friends in New York, and I was very acting focused and still writing for fun. I was always an actor who wrote, an actor who produced. And then in 2014, really for fun, I saw this ad and I ended up applying to the screenwriting competition. It was called the Bombay Sapphire Imagination Series, where they had an established screenwriter. And at the time, it was the screenwriter of Precious, provide 5 lines of dialogue. And they asked writers to create a 5-page script around those 5 lines of dialogue. And I won. I was one of 5 winners, and our scripts got produced and premiered at Tribeca. And so when that happened, to be honest, like, I didn't have the tap you on the shoulder and give you a business card moment, but I did suddenly have a bit more credential and a bit more, attention for my writing in a way that I felt like I should pay attention to. So I just started shifting my focus a little more intentionally towards my writing, towards getting serious about learning form and watching more film and TV because I had been so theater focused. And I'm really self taught. I didn't go to film school, but I've been on a lot of sets as an actor. I have programmed for film festivals. I've read a million scripts. So really, I've just continued to self educate and be hungry for learning opportunities, um, leading to in the last handful of years, I ended up writing this feature film for Hulu, that was released in 2023 called Jagged Mind. So now I find myself in this, feature film space that I never expected when I was doing A Christmas Carol as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that your writing kind of grew along with your acting. You're kind of doing both simultaneously. So I know that I mentioned this to you when we were at the film festival together. Being from the South personally, just the how I feel so intimidated when I go to New York City. Just I feel like whenever I'm there, that people kind of know that I'm not supposed to be there, that I'm some sort of tourist. And here you are, coming from Ohio State. And listen, I don't want to get off into a side tangent about Big Ten versus SEC because I'm an Alabama Crimson Tide guy. But I will say, take me through kind of that moment of moving to New York City, getting out there because you're starting a theater company, like you said, just how you overcame this intimidation, if you felt it, to really kind of get yourself and throw yourself out there and be so forward thinking to kind of make opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started at Ohio State, which, first of all, I always say, like, I don't really care about football. I went to theater school, until we win the national championship, and then I care a lot about
Yeah,
it.
now you're on the bandwagon now.
Yeah, now it feels really fun. Um, Ohio State, at least at the time, was the biggest school or one of the biggest schools in the country, so consequently, the theater department is one of the biggest in the country, and it's a BA program, it's not a BFA program, which means there's no guarantee of performance if you're studying as an actor. So part of the reason we started our own theater company is we observed people graduating saying they had a focus on acting and never having been on stage in 4 years. And I don't to be totally honest, I wish I could tell you where ambition comes from or where hunger or desire comes from, but I just found a group of women that I felt that we all felt similarly, like, we are here, we're spending our time, we're spending our money to learn, and to get opportunities, and if the school can't provide those, then we need to make them happen. And I feel very lucky that I learned that lesson at a young age that then I was able to translate that to moving to New York. And I will say I moved to New York by myself in my car with my cats. And my best friend from college was already in New York. And so frankly, like, I had a friend, I had a place to stay, and I had what I thought was a job opportunity. And so some of that was set up for me. And then of course I moved to New York and the job opportunity fell through. So
Mm.
I very quickly needed to find a job. And so I applied for a bunch of things. I was working in an arts education program. And then I also applied to a casting internship at ABC. And so, like, as an actor, I got very, immediately thrown into the world of TV casting, of TV scripts. When I was working there, it was the year that Desperate Housewives and Lost premiered. S
Oh, wow.
so I had access to read some of, like, the best TV scripts that were coming out at the time, and I very quickly made a point of volunteering at any organization that was related to film, theater, TV. I was, volunteering for it was called IFP at the time, it's now the Gotham. I was volunteering for their film week and meeting a lot of people. I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be in the place that would facilitate the ability to do that.
Yeah, there's something very admirable about your attitude towards, getting out there and traveling and taking a risk and wanting to go and see other places and do other things because and I admire that in people like you because I found that I am different in that regard. Like I always was very kind of risk averse and wanted to kind of stay closer to home where I felt kind of safer and try to, make a career there. And so there's always that moment now that I'm 20 plus years beyond that stage of my life where you do take stock and you look back and you say, would my career be any different? Would I be different? And of course you would, right? But so what I struggle with is leaving the past in the past and making the most of where I am and what I'm doing now. But I say that just to say that what you did is I find extremely admirable and something that when I asked the question about intimidation, that would have been something that I would have struggled with. I know doing something like you did, but it's fantastic that you were so just easygoing about it all and we're like, yeah, let's and adventurous.
Well, I think if you really wanna get into the psychology of adaptability, also, like, go through your parents' divorce when you're very young too,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
I had a lot of change as a young kid, and I'll be the first to say, like, I don't like change, I'm a type A monster, I like plans, I like to follow plans, which makes the arts a terrible choice for me, but I think at a very young age, I had to learn how to, pivot and how to be adaptable and how to, like, embrace new environments. And for better or worse, that has benefited me, as an adult.
Yeah, I'm a huge Simpsons fan. There's a great joke about communications majors on The Simpsons where a star football player gets injured and the doctor tells him, "Well, you're just gonna have to fall back on your major." And he looks at his chart. He goes, "Communications? Oh, dear Lord, not a not a good thing to get into."
Yeah, I don't know that, in the end, I was gonna say, I don't know that I've used that degree, but I don't know that I've used either of my degrees. I think it's useful to go to college and learn how to be a person outside of your household and your comfort zone and all of that.
During your early years of kinda getting the TV work, like you were saying, and getting exposed to these scripts and seeing that quality of work come through, were there any mentors or veterans in the industry that you kinda latched onto or maybe that, kinda gave you some, sound advice to that you kinda think on today?
I mean, the short answer is, n no, and frankly, like,
And and
uh
moving on.
well, no, I, really struggled with it when I, was working on my feature because, frankly, I had worked so long as an actor and a producer that my circle of close friends that I felt like I could ask for specifically film screenwriting advice for a writer who wasn't also directing was very small, was very limited. So in New York for many years, I ran a theater company called Effort Club in the spirit of why are we waiting for people to give us work? Let's just make our own work. And I commissioned original short plays for 10 years. We did 1 year that was short films, but I met a lot of playwrights through that who now are working in film and TV, of course. And I will say one of my friends, Katya McMullen, who's a brilliant writer and has written a lot of TV, the one piece of advice that she gave me was to it was when I was pitching the original um, feature because it started as a short. I made a short for Hulu that then they said, now pitch it to us as a feature. I've never pitched anything in my life other than that short film. And so I was freaking out and I called her and I said, like, what does this even mean? And to be honest, like Katya and I have always been friendly. We have a good relationship, but she was so generous with her time. And what she said to me is, you have to treat it like a campfire story. You have to like root it in ritual about like why people used to gather around the campfire and tell each other stories. Don't worry about like the story beats and like making everything perfect. Like you just have to tell a good story. And I think, like, that still sticks with me, both in terms of, like, simplifying everything, that, like, what it all comes down to is just telling a good story. That, like, you can have structure, you can read these, like, Save the Cat books, and trust me, I have and I do, but at the end of the day, all it comes down to is gathering around the campfire and telling the story, and that's the thing that, like, you have to keep as your touchstone. So, my answer is, like, tongue in cheek to did I have mentors? Like, not really, and I'm still looking for them, and I'm starting to gather them, but I do have friends and friends who have given me advice, and I think that's a piece of advice that I go back to.
I wish it could be just as simple as like, I've got this great idea for a feature. Trust me, it's going to be awesome. And then they hand you a bag of money to go and do it. Like, hey, we believe you. Go and make it.
Well, and the problem is you don't learn how to do it until you've done it.
Yeah.
Like many things, it's not like I could go watch you pitch in a room full of executives and learn how to do that, right? Like, particularly since COVID, pitching has also changed. I pitched my short in a room full of people. I pitched my feature on Zoom. And now
Mhm.
there's like a mix of how people are doing it, although I keep hearing that more and more pitches are happening on Zoom, and it's just a different animal. I think the upside that everybody agrees on is you can keep your notes on your screen. So if you're a person that's nervous about like memorization or losing your place, you can literally read off of your screen.
That's what I'm doing right now with this interview. Is you just got my notes posted up
Yeah,
here so I don't
yeah,
lose my
but there
spot.
I feel like there is something you lose when you're not in a room with people, when you can't
Yes.
read body language and have small talk and like, see if people are actually like sitting up in their chairs or leaning back or, all of those weird things that you learn. Um, it's really interesting. And I will say, like, I have had now 2 successful pitches. Does that mean I'll have a third? I don't know. I think it depends on, like, the people, the project. There's no one way to do any of this, and that's the part that's, like, endlessly fascinating and frustrating at the same time.
I know even in my work as a video producer, having to show someone work for a creative review over Zoom is so challenging because like you said, you can't get a sense of how they're reacting to what they're seeing on screen and you can't really get their read on your thoughts on your intentionality about why you edited things a certain way or why this is here and this isn't here, and so I hear what you're saying. I love being in the room with other people to kind of feel the vibe of everything. So is there anything else about your early career that stands out?
I think the part that, like, jump-started my acting career is I booked a role on Law and Order SVU, which has turned into a recurring role. So I played Nurse Shelby Roberts. It's a very small part, but when I initially booked it, it was meant as a one-scene, one-episode role, and they've now brought me back, I don't know, 7, 8 times over the last handful of years. And when I booked Law& and Order SVU, I was able to use that credit to approach acting agents and managers,
Mhm.
and get a little more, just have a little more cred. I also had a callback on Broadway for August Osage County, that helped too. I didn't book it, but I had the callback. Um, so I think think about those moments as kind of being significant. I think for my writing filmmaking career, I mean, it was the Hulu thing, like the short, well, the Tribeca piece of it, followed by the short on Hulu, followed by the feature on Hulu. Those have all kind of been moments I could point to, and I haven't been hired for another significant paying job since the Hulu film came out 2 years ago. So as much as I would like to say, like, this amazing thing happened and it really moved the needle for me, if I'm being honest, it hasn't. I think it matters. I think it will matter, and it hasn't necessarily yet. So I struggle with like what matters when, and like, does none of it matter? Does all of it matter? Um, it feels significant, and practically, it hasn't necessarily led to the next thing yet.
I know as soon as you said Law and Order SVU, my tens of listeners were frantically searching IMDb to look that up to say, "Oh yeah, that's where I know her from."
At this stage of my life and career, I've done Law& and Order a few times, and I love doing it, and I'm so grateful for it, and I please hope that they continue to call me, and I have to protect this other part of my career where, like, frankly, I just won an award in Omaha for, a pilot that I wrote, and I'm so happy that I went there and, like, met a bunch of people. I reaffirmed my relationships with the programmers there. I, think they're building a really wonderful community there, and I'm so glad that I went. But those 2 things just serve different parts of my career in, different and equal ways, and it's so hard to decide, like, what is the right thing to do, you know?
I love the vocal inflection there on the humble brag about I just want to know. So I'm like, this is your like you're the guest. Like, go ahead, feel free to shout it from the rooftops about all of your accolades because that's why you're here on the podcast.
Well, Clint, we should say that you won 2 awards at the Magnolia Film Festival.
No,
Very
stop it.
excited.
Oh, stop it.
I
Yeah,
listen, I talked in therapy today about how awards are very dumb until you win one or lose
right.
one, and then
I
they
was really I
again.
was really scared about how you're going to finish that sentence after saying that I won 2 awards and you were saying, and I was just talking in therapy today about how jealous I was of Clint's 2 awards and
No,
yeah, no, I actually, it's funny because this podcast was born out of my writing on Substack. So I'm sharing these stories on my Substack of my own career experiences. And I just finished writing a story that's going to publish later about that very same thing about winning awards because I liken it to, and forgive me because I'm the football guy. I'm going to go to college football. I liken it to any sports fanatic that follows his or her team even through the rough patches when you are constantly losing, but you keep coming back. There's a reason you keep coming back. Or the golfer who gets that really great shot on 18, but through the rest of the day, he just wanted to throw his clubs into the nearest water hazard. And the reason what I wrote about was that there's a little bit of hope there and a little bit of validation or encouragement you get and now I would do what I'm doing regardless of whether I got any recognition for it. But I think as humans, to win an award is that little bit of encouragement that the golfer needs to come back another day, or the little bit of encouragement that the sports fan needs to come back for one more Saturday or Sunday to watch his team because it's like that moment of like, oh, I'm good. I can keep going now. That someone recognizes it. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was saying in therapy, was that I think the human condition is to want to be seen and want to be known, and I think particularly for artists, like, our work is an expression of ourselves.
yep,
So, when you win that award, it's that little bit of like, "Oh, somebody sees me. Oh, somebody, like, sees the work that I'm doing and how that's connected to me." Which feels great, and then when you don't win it or when you lose it, it feels like your work, is not seen or not validated or I don't know, like, it's hard to talk about it without sounding, crabby or, like, sour grapes
yes,
about it, you know?
yeah,
But I do think that, like, there's something interesting about it that, like also, there are big awards at big festivals, and those are the ones that probably in the long term matter, quote unquote, in, like, the industry. But these smaller festivals that we get so close to each other and the festival organizers, and it feels like a family, that sometimes is, like, the harder loss because it feels
hmm
like you all know each other. And then it feels like they know me and they didn't wanna give me an award? Oh, that's tough. But again, I'm somebody who has won awards and lost more awards than I've won, and it's just part of the game. It's just part of
yeah,
the business. And so you have to just get good with, like, art is subjective. It always is, it always will be, and one person could really respond to it and another person could not. And that's just the reality of what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, the rejection column on my Film Freeway page is definitely piling up for sure. But I'm a very creative person. I think, like, to your point about what you were saying about just, doing this even without recognition, although we do want some recognition, that's nice. I mean, that's why I'm dabbling in doing this podcast. Like, it's just something else for me to create and to try to experiment with. And yes, that would be awesome if people subscribe and I get to be well known. Because for me, I've always been an ambitious person, and I've always wanted not to be famous, but to be respected within my industry to a point where people kind of within the industry kind of know who I am. And hey, maybe Sony or Airy or Red, maybe they see my work sometime and they say, "Hey, Clint, here's some free gear. We want you to try out for us and then test it and tell us what you think." That would be nice. That would be great. But yeah, so I'm dabbling in a lot of doing this and writing and YouTube and just throwing myself out there for sure.
Well, that goes back to making your own work.
Yeah.
I was on a panel at Omaha and they asked like what is your advice to younger filmmakers or younger writers? And I said everything I've ever gotten has come out of doing my own work. Whether it's like having my own theater company, making my own films, writing scripts in between jobs, like you just have to. Both to feel connected to the stories you want to tell and to stay creative and like to try a bunch of different things and see what you like and what you don't,
Mhm.
to fail and to do it better, to learn how to do it better.
Yeah, so to that point about learning and failing and experimenting, is there anything that sticks out into your mind, whether it's from your experiences as a writer or a filmmaker or an actor, where something did go wrong for you or something didn't turn out exactly as you had planned, and maybe the specifics of that story and what that did for you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many moments that I thought, "This is the one," right? Like, if I get this, then I see how everything else is gonna play out. Um, the one that comes to mind for me that is as an actor, like you were asking about significant career moments, I ended up getting into final callbacks for this play that Woody Harrelson was directing in New York. And so at the time, I had read the script. I thought I was right for it. I went through a couple rounds of auditions before I met Woody. It was a period piece. I think it was set in like the 1930s or 40s. So I had to like get my wardrobe right, get my hair right. I worked on those sides like every day, all the time, like to death. Um, so that I was prepped for when I went into the room to see him. I was the first person that went into the room, and I should say, like, in the back of my mind, of course, I was like, "Okay, if I book this, like, it's gonna get all these reviews, like, it's Woody Harrelson. Of course, it's gonna get all this coverage, and then they're gonna, like, see me and talk about me and, you know, and then. So they had given me, I mean, an ungodly amount of pages. I wanna say, like, 15, 20 pages of material. So, like, lots of stuff that I had to work on and memorize. The very first scene was the initial audition scenes, the one that I knew the best. So I go into the room, and God bless him, Woody Harrelson was sitting on an exercise ball, bouncing up and down, wearing no shoes, and, said hello, and he was like, "So what scene do you wanna read?" And I had, like, 20 pages worth of material, and I was like, "I guess I'll just start with the first one." So I read the first scene with the audition reader. I thought it, like, went well, and then Woody said, "Okay, thank you." And I had a moment of being like, "Oh, thank thank you," like, "Move on?" "Thank you, leave." And
Yeah.
so I went out of the room and instantly burst into tears because I had worked so hard on it and I knew what being dismissed meant. And the casting director ran out of the room behind me and she was like, that was a great audition. Just wanted you to know. I was supposed to be playing a German girl. And she said, Woody just doesn't think you look German enough.
Um,
And in the moment, I mean, I had a range of emotions, but, nothing I can do about that. And so it felt like this, opportunity that slipped through my fingers, and the epilogue to the story is this is not a spoiler alert because this was, like, many, many years ago. The show didn't get very good reviews, And I have clipped, so above my desk where I'm sitting now, I have like a cork board, and I don't want to call it a vision board because that feels a little too like woo woo, but it's got a bunch of like meaningful things to me on it. And I have a 1-star review out and pinned to my board as a reminder that like sometimes the things that we think are going to be the career mover, the career changer, like this is it,
Yeah.
like wouldn't have been or like aren't meant for us, and it wouldn't have been a big deal in the end anyway, and probably better that I didn't end up doing it.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was a student filmmaker in college, and my student film my senior year got picked up by a film festival in New York. And here's a 22, 23-year-old kid from Alabama that gets accepted into a New York Film Festival, and I flew up there. The my co-writer and producer flew up there with me. A friend and his wife flew up there. You know, I had just been newly married, so my wife was with. And I mean, to your point, I thought this was going to be it. You know, I'm coming out thinking, oh, this is going to be the moment that you hear about on Project Greenlight or, you know, from Sundance, where they see this short film and you get it instantly, they want to develop into a feature. I thought that that was going to be the start for me. I'm just getting out of college. This is going to be it. I'm going to be whisked away and start a whole career as a filmmaker. But I think two people were at the screening.
Some things are just always going to be out of your control, and sometimes like on a good day I find that encouraging, and on a bad day I find that discouraging. It just depends on how you look at it. But it's just I don't know, I just always think it's a reminder, like you go in, you do the best work that you can, and then leave feeling like you did everything you could, and then it's up to them, you know?
Hmm.
I same thing I've done with, like, general meetings as a writer. I think, like, I feel pretty confident and good talking to people. You just get a vibe. Like, sometimes it feels like you could talk to a person for hours. Sometimes it feels like it's a bad first date. And it's not.
Yeah.
I know because I've had, great long conversations that it's not just me. It's not always me. It's a two-way street, and then there has to be an exchange, of energy and of enthusiasm and interest and all of that.
So, with that in mind, do you find it to be a constant struggle? Because as you're describing this and moving from project to project and auditioning and writing and meeting and talking, I mean, for you, is it does it get to a point where it's just like I'm just tired. I'm tired of this struggle. I want it to be easier.
Yeah. I think especially now, like, to be honest, I, am in my 40s, and so I wonder how much longer it will take to feel like I'm at a place where I don't have to work as hard. I think I think ambitious people always will want more than what they have, or will want to at least maintain what they have, and so I don't know that the feeling of ever that will ever go away, like wanting to work and wanting to do good work and wanting to do more work. Um, and like I said, I do still have a variety of what I consider day jobs. And that is exhausting to just continue to have to hustle to make money, to live, to do the creative work. But I've also always said, like, I genuinely feel like I'll do it until I can't do it anymore, whatever that means, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially. Um, and today I'm doing it. Like I feel like I know what I want my career to be. And for me, that career can only happen here or LA, and I prefer New York. Um, so it genuinely is about tenacity. I think like what is the requirement? It's tenacity. It's the stick to itiveness. It's the like knowing what your goal is, being super clear about it, and then like clearing a path to get there.
What you said about what you want out of your career was actually what I was going to talk about because it was actually great advice that you gave to me when we were at the Magnolia Film Festival luncheon. Because I was talking to you about the fact that I really just do a lot of short films. I've written two feature scripts, and I remember talking to you saying, "Well, I've written two features, but I really don't know what to do with them. They're just kind of sitting in a drawer right now." And And that advice that you gave about what you want out of your career is kind of resonated with me. And I thought about that long after the film festival. And I think whereas you feel as though your own personal ambitions lie in New York and you can only do what you want to do there, I have to reckon with the reality that I'm content with my career here and content with, I'm not going to be probably producing these features, and they may just always sit in a drawer. But knowing what you want out of your own career and being content with that is the main thing. And I've struggled with that in the past, and I think your advice kind of helped me to see things a little bit clearer. I've struggled in the past of seeing others that are in New York or LA, and they're really making a go of it, and they're producing, whether it's independent film or whether they're working for a studio or have some sort of deal. And I'm thinking, "Well, man, why can't that be me? Why can't I do that?" And of course, yes, I could do that, but it requires something on my part that I've got to be willing to do and pull the trigger on. And if I'm honest with myself, no, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm probably going to be fine with where I am, and I've got to be content with that. So anyway, saying that to say that was great advice, and I appreciate that conversation we had at the luncheon.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate, there's no right or wrong answer to any of this. And I think like it's okay if you don't want to live on one of those coasts and you have a family and you have other priorities. I will say like I am a single person with no kids and that allows me a certain kind of freedom and selfishness that allows me to travel and to live in a studio apartment in New York that not everybody has. I'll call it a luxury. Like there are sacrifices that I make, I probably should date more. Um, but like I have been very career focused and I feel very comfortable in this environment. Big cities like this aren't for everybody either. And I think as long as you know what you're aiming for, what your comfort level is, what makes you happy, that's all that matters. You don't have to like hit anybody else's goal. You only have to hit your own.
So now tell me about how your short film First Date came about and then how that led you into developing it into a feature.
I actually had a TV script that was at a festival called Catalyst Content Festival in Duluth, Minnesota. And the year that that TV project was there, it was 2019. There were a lot of industry folks out there. And I took a look at the list of the industry. And again, like luckily I had a manager, but I did the work of identifying who I wanted to meet with. And one of the people that was supposed to be there was an executive from 20th Digital, which is the online department of Fox, Hulu. So I took a general meeting with somebody from 20th at this film festival where I had a TV project because I asked for it. Like was a little bold and reached out. And I had this meeting that frankly I thought was very bad. RB Pedrassian, who I'm very close with now, he asked me at the time if I would be interested in pitching on these horror projects because they were doing this series called Bite Size Halloween, which is discontinued but still online on Hulu. And so they actually said you could bring in up to 5 pitches. So that's what I did. I came up with 5 different ideas. But I went to LA. I was in the room with them. And back to the point of like when you're in a room with somebody, you can just tell when they're more interested. So I pitched 4 ideas. I saw them like they asked some questions. They seemed like kind of on the fence. And then the last thing I pitched, I watched every person in the room sit up in their chair.
Mm.
And the original idea was this woman goes on a blind date. She's having a great time. She goes home with the woman she's on the date with and sees pictures of herself on the wall and doesn't understand why they're there, how they're there, what's going on. And they were really into that idea. And so that was February 2020. Then COVID happened.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
So I was, as we all were, in limbo for several
Right.
months. And by I think June, July, we started talking about it again, like if we were going to be able to get production up. It was one location, two actors. So also from the very beginning, it was very simple. Like I come from a theater background. I come from a scrappy, have no
Yep.
money. How do you do this? And so I intentionally gave them something very easy to produce, which I'm not saying the script itself wasn't good. I think it's well constructed, but I made it easy for them to say yes. Um, and so in September 2020, we shot it, and it was one of the first projects back up in New York. And then that short went online on Hulu in, like, in October 2020. It went up in time for Halloween, and then by December, they asked me to pitch it as a feature. So for the feature pitch, they told me that I had 20 minutes to pitch. So
Wow.
I actually wrote the entire thing out, and I practiced with a friend
Yeah.
of mine who, like, sat on Zoom with me, gave
Okay.
gave me notes, like, told me what he thought was interesting, thought what he thought was confusing, what was boring, and we, like, worked it. With the feature, again, you just have to get a little more granular about, again, why this movie? Like, why should you guys pick this movie? It feels like, you used the word audition before, but that really is what it is. Like, you give them every reason to say yes. You say, like, "Here are some famous actors that I think would be right for these roles. Here are some movies that it is similar to that have been successful. Here's who I am as a creator and why I feel confident that I can execute this. And you've seen the short and you know that we executed that well." Not for nothing, the short got some good press. The incredible Hari Neff and Kara Young are in the short, and frankly, like, we got a lot of press coverage because of Hari and because of Kara, and that helped. And so I was able to say, you know that we've been successful already in this
Mhm.
short form, so why wouldn't we be successful in the longer form?" If you've ever applied to a lab or a residency, it's very similar. It's a lot of like, "Why you? Why now? Why this piece? Tell us what it is." And so they had some notes on the outline, and so at the end of that conversation, I think I said like, "Oh, so if you're giving me notes, I assume we're moving in the right direction." And they were like, "Oh yeah, we wanna do it." And
Great.
it was a very casual, like, "Oh, we just assumed that you knew." Um, and so I turned around another outline. I think they basically said yes to "Let's go to script, let's make the movie." I wrote it in 21, we shot in 22, we released in 23. I contractually wrote, 3 drafts of it. And then I should also say just for transparency, in the feature world, the director gets a director's pass on the script also. So if you watch Jagged Mind, the movie, that draft that was shot was not my draft. So I'll just leave it
Yeah.
there and say I wrote 3 drafts. But then there were additional drafts that were not mine, that were production drafts.
Yeah. Was there a particular note that you received throughout the writing process, either, from the executives or anybody else that, maybe was particularly tough to take at the time that maybe, that you learned something from in the process?
I mean, the answer is like, yeah, of course, notes are hard. And you will always think as the writer that you know best.
Yeah,
So it is hard sometimes to get notes that you just fundamentally think change your story or change what you're trying to say or change. Jagged Mind is a time loop movie. So I had spent a lot of time, no pun intended, really working through the timeline. Like if you change this,
yeah,
this has to change and then that affects that. And sometimes I would get notes that I think didn't take into consideration the full picture. So
I see.
I would have to just take some time and be thoughtful in my response, take the notes that I could take, and then the ones that really felt, like it might unravel something, ask them why the note, like, what is it that if you can articulate further, like, what is it that you are bumping against, what is the issue that you're trying to solve, and if there's a conversation to be had, have the conversation. But I don't think I ever got to a point where, like, either they gave me a note that I just didn't do or, I just flat out said no. I really tried to take everything in as much as I could and push back on the, like, handful of places that I could.
I love that Mel Brooks interview where he said that he would always agree to every studio note that he got and then just never do it. Just
Well, and
say,
let's
"Yes, yes, of course."
And of course, that's Mel Brooks, you
Of
know?
course, yeah, he can get away with that.
I think you get to a certain level and you can. For me, it's my first feature, it's my first studio feature, to be totally honest. I didn't have a lot of leverage, I think,
Oh, sure.
but I always tried to defend in the places that, like, 1 out of 5 notes, I would feel like, let's just talk about that a little more because maybe I'm not even understanding your note, or maybe I'm not understanding why you want to change that scene or change that line or whatever the thing is.
So you get finished with Jagged Mind, that's kind of in your rear view. So once you had kind of finished that script and they were well into production and you said you were back doing your thing for your next, what did you then kind of turn your attention to after Jagged Mind?
That, like, brings us into the ghost. I will say I was both a little, I mean, discouraged, I guess, but disappointed that I didn't have more creative involvement as the writer on Jagged Mind, and that's very typical, as I have learned. But what I started to talk to friends about was, "Oh, if you want your voice to truly be expressed in film, you have to direct. That's just the path to get your story told." Jagged Mind is a version of my story, but if I wanted it to be the story that I wrote, that's when you have to direct. And so I'd been thinking already about directing. I knew that it was something I was interested in. And so I just decided, like, okay, if there's a silver lining to this experience, it's that, like, that is the thing that's pushing me to try this new thing that I haven't done before. Also around the same time, I got ghosted by this person that I was seeing and had feelings for, and I was, like, struggling with that. I would think I was, like, struggling with that and then struggling with feeling left out of the feature, and those 2 things just kind of collided at the right moment. And
Yeah,
so I wrote The Ghost. Also, 2 people, mostly one location, that I knew would be very doable in a, affordable way over a weekend with a lot of favors and friends and blood, sweat, and tears, and a little bit of the money that I had saved from Hulu. I had put it into my savings account, and I just felt like I would rather take that money and use it, as the next step in my professional career than trying to do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or, I've done crowdfunding in my life, and it always is exhausting and, is its own full-time job.
for sure.
And so I, yeah, just put all of what I had kind of learned from the Jagged Mind experience into The Ghost, into
Mhm.
my directorial debut.
So how was that experience for you? Did you find that um, rewarding from a directorial standpoint of moving into something that you had never done before? Do you now see yourself as this is now something else I'm going to then pursue as well?
It's interesting. The answer, like, a lot of people have asked me, "Oh, did you like directing?" And the answer is like, "Yeah, absolutely. And I don't wanna do it again with my own money." I think, like, I would love to direct again if I can sell something and attach myself, if somebody asked me to direct something and had money behind it. After directing one film, I'd be lying if I said, "I now feel like a director." I actually feel more comfortable, again, with the term filmmaker because I think I've been a writer and a producer, and those things also
Yeah,
mean filmmaking. Um, I was saying this in a Q&A in Omaha, but, like, I actually went going into it feeling pretty good, feeling like I've spent almost 20 years as an actor, a writer, and a producer on or around sets. I know how to talk to actors. I know how to describe what I wanna see. I know how to lead a team. The stuff that I was anxious about were all of the technical elements that I never learned, the lenses, the lights, the terminology for it. And I ended up hiring just a really incredible DP. Her name is Ola Olabi, and she never made me feel bad or weird or wrong, for asking questions. And so I just learned a lot. And I think, again, just like anything, the more you do it, the more you learn. And so I would also love to direct again just to keep learning and to keep improving and hopefully direct a feature.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask a general question. If you have your biggest on-set or on-stage nightmare story, because people love a good story where things just go completely off the rails. So I wanted to see what yours is.
Yeah, I don't know how big it is, but I will say, so my previous short, Sitting, which is the one that I made before First Date, we were shooting out in Long Island, and we had picked up the camera equipment, and we didn't check it before we brought it to set, so we picked it up in Brooklyn, drove it out, a couple hours to Long Island, and we found out pretty quickly that they didn't charge the batteries for the cameras. And so, we had dead batteries, and we had to get them replaced or we couldn't keep shooting. So, of course, we called the camera rental place, and they were like, "Oh, we can put it in an Uber for you." And so we tried to do that, and, Uber drivers would not pick up a strange looking battery and deliver it to Long Island. They kept thinking that we were putting some kind of I don't know what, some kind of bomb, some kind of explosive device in the back of their car. It took 3 or 4 tries to get somebody to, first of all, even take the battery, drive it out to Long Island, but that was another $200 car ride that was
Oh my goodness.
not in the budget and cost us, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours worth of shooting time, which wasn't great. So, like, the lesson, of course, is, like, check your equipment, make sure you know what you're getting. Even with the Ghost, I couldn't afford to hire PAs to do, um, returns. So I did them myself with, my friend Ian, who ended up ADing and associate producing, and when we rolled up to return the equipment, the guys at the company were like, "Oh, we got it, we got it." Just took everything out of the van. Um, Nobody had a checklist. Nobody was signing anything. And of course, like, I was exhausted and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then I get a call that they were claiming that we had either damaged or stolen some materials. Which we didn't. Like, of course, in the end, like, we shot in a one-bedroom apartment. If we left something behind, we would have seen it. We checked everything before it went into the van, but we did not check it coming out. So I
Mm.
I think, again, it's like the lesson from both of those stories is even when you're tired, when you're in a rush, you just have to be vigilant about making sure that, you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed so that it doesn't cost you later.
I am so OCD about stuff like that. I've been on the road down to go to a location and realized I didn't have the lights with me and had to turn around and go back and get all my lighting gear. I had it set aside, just never made it to the car. So now I'm constantly like quadruple checking everything because I'm so paranoid about this. I definitely want would love to do this again and have you come back because we didn't even get into your work specifically with film festivals and I think that would be great conversation for what I'm trying to do here in reaching other filmmakers and people that are interested in this world and kind of your perspectives on that and kind of get some inside baseball. But I know you've got an early flight tomorrow. But what is it that you want to plug that you want to share with everybody that they should go see? Of course, I'm sure Jagged Mind is on top of that list. Anything you want to plug and anything that you're working on that's coming up next for you?
Yeah, I mean, give Jagged Mind those views on Hulu, and then hopefully we'll release The Ghost online on Vimeo later in the year, so stay tuned for that. My personal website is my name, Allyson, Alysonm for Morgan, AllisonM.com. So you can always check out my website. All my social media is on there as well, and I keep stuff somewhat updated on there. And in the meantime, I'm writing. I have a new feature. It's called All Inclusive. It's a rom-com murder mystery. So I'm trying to send that around, see if I can get some interest, get some money, and then, working on a handful of smaller things.
And then, of course, we didn't even get to talk about you also have published two novels. If my research assistant is correct.
Yeah, they're on tapas.com on Tapas Media. Also available as audiobooks if you prefer to listen to audiobooks.
Well, if you haven't figured it out already from listening to this conversation, Allyson is just kind of a Renaissance woman doing all kinds of creative endeavors. I have certainly enjoyed meeting you at the Magnolia Film Festival, and I'm so glad you just took time out to come on my little podcast here and share your experiences with me. This has been fantastic.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Clint, I love talking with you. I love your film, and I hope you continue your filmmaking and creative journey as well. I always love talking about this stuff because it makes us feel less alone.
And that's my conversation with Allyson Morgan. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to take the time to leave a review to help others discover the show, and then send a link out to others that you know. Recommend it to your friends and family and contacts. Let them know what Persistence of Vision is all about and how much you've enjoyed this podcast so far. Please connect with me at linktree.com/Clint Till. That's where you can find everything that I'm doing online. And if you have a personal story to share about your own career experiences and what lessons you learned from those experiences, hit me up, let me know. You can email me, clinttill@substack.com, or fill out the contact form at clinttill.net. Thanks so much. See you next month for another episode of Persistence of Vision.